Hey YouTube, welcome back for another Red story. Today we have two stories about Kevin, so sit back and enjoy. Let's go. Kevin thinks nobody notices him trashing his mother's flat. We live in a 4-story building, and in the flat next to us lives a mother with her 3 children. The oldest of those is the Kevin of this story and has just turned 18 and is now of legal age. We all get along pretty well, but Kevin has often demonstrated that he is not the sharpest tool in the shed. So this summer, the mother and Kevin's 2 siblings went on vacation. COVID-19 compliant camping or something, and Kevin didn't want to go, stayed at home. I did the same when I was his age, awesome time. He also could take care of their 2 cats. I should also mention that this building has almost no soundproofing whatsoever. When the neighbors next door or those below us speak louder than normal conversation level, we can hear them. If they are shouting, we can understand them when we are in our living room or bedroom. It can be quite annoying. The first week was eventless. We enjoyed the silence as there was no shouting next door when the mother turned off his Wi-Fi as punishments if he didn't do his homework or similar. The second week, however, was completely different. He had some friends over. We heard them talking loudly in the stairwell, and it was hard not to notice when they arrived or left. One girl was having a phone call on their mobile in the corridor when we came home one day. Then we noticed the smell of cigarettes in the corridor. It was even noticeable in our flat, and heard them talking about smoking weed. I'm not saying this because I want to judge his lifestyle, but to make clear that it was nearly impossible to not notice what was going on next door. And we were sure that his mother did not approve of him and his friends smoking in the flat. We weren't going to rat him out, but we also wouldn't lie if asked directly. And to be honest, we were thrilled to see how the hell he would talk his way off it. When his mother and siblings returned, we immediately heard them scream next door. Not 1 minute later, she knocked at our door and asked us whether we heard anything. We weren't sure what to answer, so she showed us her flat. There was trash everywhere. At least 1 lamp was shattered, and empty air fresheners bottles and empty bottles were scattered around. She also told us that all their clothes had been taken out of the wardrobes and scattered across the room, and you could smell the cigarette smoke everywhere. He apparently simply put all the used cat litter in his sister's room. The cats had used the bed's as toilet and were now so afraid and disturbed that they hid under the bed and didn't want to come out. So we told her that we heard and saw him having 5 or 6 friends over, but we didn't hear anyone trashing the place, which is true. So she called him on his mobile phone in front of us. We could only hear her, but that was enough. "You come home right now." "You know exactly why. When I called you 3 hours ago, I told you to clean this place up and..." "Are you kidding me? Of course you didn't. You and your friends trashed this place." "Don't lie to me. You had people here. There are witnesses. Do you think I'm stupid? You will come home at once." We heard a lot of shouting later that evening, and honestly, I don't know if I could have stayed as calm as the mother did. A few days later, we meet her outside, and she tells us what his excuses were. "There were no people over. There were only 2 people over. I told you on the phone that I had 5 people over. We didn't smoke. I cleaned up like you asked. Oh, so when you don't see that I've cleaned up, I don't have to do it anymore, since you will not notice anyway?" She also told us other gems. He was supposed to feed the cats 1 can per day. He fed them too much and then ran out of cat food and didn't buy more. He doesn't know the difference between smoking cigarettes and smoking weed. They took speed, but thinks that speed is completely legal because his friends told him so. He claimed having no idea that the cats shit in the beds, but it wasn't his fault. He doesn't know why all the clothes were scattered around, but it wasn't his fault. I forgot to tell you that he managed to lock himself out of the flat 3 times in 1 day. 2 times we had to open the main building door for him, and once I had to use some tools open the flat door that fell shut. He said, "I thought I had a key with me." What astonished us most is the complete lack of thinking. Did he think we are blind and deaf and didn't hear his friends? Did he think we didn't smell the cigarettes? Did he think we wouldn't tell his mother when asked? He didn't even try asking us to lie for him. Did he think his mother wouldn't notice? What the hell did he think would happen when his mother returned and saw a trashed flat? I thus conclude a Kevin. Kevina, the end with some mic. So let me start off by stating that in August 2019, we were giving a bouncing, bloviating assistant CEO to our company. We will call him Mecha Mike, because he surpasses Mike in sheer, unbridled assholery. But that's the thing about assholes, you need an asshole to get rid of the shit built up inside, and that is exactly what did. Let's backpedal a bit though. Kevina has been royally fucking up left and right since COVID happened, and our organization shuttered its windows for the most part outside of some patients, researchers, the occasional lost professor trying to find a new job, a disgruntled intern or two, and a horde of angry Canada geese thirsting for blood. Most of our operations are very weird right now, and we were doing our best to keep things going. In addition to deciding she is in charge of social media for some reason, Kevina, who was our chief development officer, had also decided that she was in charge of office morale. This meant bothering and bullying the hell out of people who were taking care of family members during COVID, ranging from uplifting emails to randomly calling people during the workday to check in on them. Mike encouraged this behavior as he wanted to do it himself, but was told to take a step back after one too many incidents with his insane behavior. It wasn't just parents with kids home from school like myself, mind you, but also people like senior scientist who has no kids but takes care of his elderly parents. Senior scientist called our boss, chief science officer, almost in tears when Kevina, aided by Mike, took turns lecturing him via phone while he was helping his mother go to get dialysis during our shelter-in-place order in late April. Even though she wasn't his boss, Kevina thought it would be great to call the poor man and berate him about how this is a pandemic, not a picnic with mom and dad. Mike also sent him a bunch of disgusting emails about his lack of performance during a pandemic. Chief science officers full-on screamed at Kevina in our parking lot later that day for her cruelty. He also berated her for never wearing a face mask. Kevina always insisted on wearing a face shield instead. According to her, it worked better than a mask, and besides, masks are for the sheeple. Chief Science Officer made sure that all of our cameras were on during this as well. After all, we are a science-based organization, we'd better be safe during a pandemic, right? The fact that Kevina refused to wear a face mask despite scientific evidence was one thing. Another officer mentioned during a Zoom call with our board and showed all the evidence of Kevina flouncing around our labs in no PPE gear or face mask, just her stupid fucking face shield. This caught the attention of who is former military guy who is the biggest stickler for rules and cleanliness. Kevina somehow thought had a crush on her because he kept texting her about wearing a mask and washing her hands. He's doing this because he's sweet on me. She co-ed once when she called me about how it was unprofessional that I was watching my preschooler while writing a program. No, Kevina, you waste of space. He's keeping notes on how you are eschewing safety protocols in a lab as hundreds of thousands die from COVID. You dumb effing doorknob. Another thing was Kevina promising the moon and stars and dwarf planets with grants this year. She was hired on a promise that she was going to get a massive grant with the NIH. It was full, beautifully inept Kevinaness to the T. Kevina kept bouncing between the grant being for the NIH or the NEA Foundation. Kevina spelled Chief Science Officer's name wrong. Kevina made the grant all about education and outreach, but could not remember which schools or district we worked with, so she picked random ones in our city that, I quote, look the poorest and blackest. Subtle racism there, Kevina, you peach. Kevina refused to let me, Director of Education, do anything with the educational programming and decided she was going to write her own. Kevina refused to let our grants writer contribute or even edit the final piece. Grants writer was pissed. If it was a little grant like 15,000 or so, whatever. But Kevina asked for $2.5 million. Fucking hell, Kevina. That's like for heart surgery research and shit, not a biochem education program for middle schoolers. Of course we didn't get it. In between all of our fundraising events, mostly being cancelled, Kevina refused to do any of them online. Another development manager ended up converting them online and still managed to get us little over $1 million. None of her grants being funded and being a useless bully. Kevina had cost us a metric fuck ton of money, as well as chasing away senior scientists who took a job with a startup to get away from her and Mike. Our CEO and our board had fucking had it. Chief Science Officer cryptically told myself and the rest of the team to stay home a few Mondays ago. who by the way got the job because he and Mike were college roommates at Notre Dame, fired Mike first. Chief Science Officer watched him pack up his office and leave. then brought Kevina in, who he fired as well. Of all the people to call, Kevina called senior scientist bawling. What did I do? She wailed at senior scientist, who promptly shrugged. Maybe it had to do with your face shield, was all he responded with. Rest in peace, Kevina Mike. May you never bother anyone with a face mask or a machete ever again. So those were the stories for today's video. Let me know what you think of it in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next video.